All right, moving right along to Mr. Bill Davis. Bill wasn't here last week, so what he was going to do for you last week, he's going to do for you this week. And keep in mind, he's building this Sylvan scale models of the CN's 1929 boxcar kit. So Bill, welcome. Glad you could join us this evening.
So here we are at part 4. We're going to talk about building ladders and steps and painting and all that kind of fun stuff. So on the O-scale kit, I had to assemble the ladder. They provided you with these two different step ladders edges. I had to replace some of the rivet detail with some titchy rivets because they didn't cast properly. And then I made rungs out of 0.15 wire. Now, in order to keep this all square and straight, I made this little jig. And these 2 bars slid here and here. And then I made this little jig to cut the length of the rungs. And then there was a groove cut in these to set the rungs in, which is what I did there. So the ladders were assembled pretty easily.
You solder them or glue them?
Well, I couldn't solder them because the ladder edges are resin. So no, that's all. Everything's ACC as far as that's concerned. Now, a lot of guys who have built this kit have replaced these with brass pieces, and they did solder them, but I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So this is the picture of the end, and it shows the end ladder here. And the next picture will show the end on the side ladder. You'll notice how they had 2 different styles of steps on them. So make sure you put the right ladder in the right corner, because you can reverse these if you're not careful. Also, this is pretty much every detail that needed to be put on this into the car. So it's pretty much ready to be painted. Now for the steps, he provided a resin casting. I felt the resin casting was a little heavy, and also it wasn't the correct shape. So I bent some wire. I had some flat brass wire. It's about maybe 15 thousandths by about 60 thousandths. And I added some nut bolt washer castings to represent its mounting. I didn't use a jig for this. I just kind of drew it on a piece of paper and just bent it accordingly. I could have made a jig for it, but there's only 2 to make, and I can handle those 2 without making a jig. So for now, the HO kit now, the HO kit, they provided titchy ladders. And so I installed the titchy ladders on one end of the car. I almost installed them on the second end of the car, but I broke them. So I have to find some more titchy ladders at the end of the car, but I did get them installed on one end of the car. It was a little more challenging putting those on that was actually doing the O-scale ones, even though I had to assemble those. And I felt that the rungs were pretty heavy on this, but I didn't want to go into the effort of cutting it all apart and rebuilding it. They're pretty fragile. Now, they provided plastic steps for the car. Once again, I felt that the shape was wrong because the prototype pictures show them with a slanted on this side over here. So I bent some very small flat wire. This is like 0.10 by 0.24 wire. And I bent it to shape and super glued it in place. So these are the cars. I primed them with, this is probably sacrilege, but I primed them with the Floqual gray primer. I don't think you're allowed to use Floqual anymore, just allowed to keep it in your shelf as a trophy or something like this to be able to have it. But I actually used it for this project. I don't have trucks yet for the O-scale car, so I have these blocks that I made up. I have a large collection of jigs, and I may do a clinic or a presentation here about building jigs, because I love making jigs for different usages on building models. So we're going to talk about weather roofing. Roofs are a real interesting part of cars. You'll notice in this picture here that these roofs are really in bad shape, but the car's not in bad shape. The sides, the ends, I mean, you got some lettering that has shown some rundown, but overall, this car is in good shape, but the roof is a mess. And I've seen a lot of pictures of cars like that, especially in the steam era, but also later on, as I'll show you more later in a bit. So this picture is shot in the 1940s. It is part of the Farm Bureau photo series. It was done by Jack Delano. It's a real interesting picture because if you look at the different roofs on these cars, there is every variety in the world up there, some with damage, like in this car here. Most of them, you'll notice there's a lot of black on them. That was probably soot from the steam locomotives. But as I said, each one of these roofs are different. Look at this roof walk here compared to this one here. Look at the way this roof is weathered compared to how this one's weathered, or this one, and so on. So there was a lot of variety in weathering on roofs. And I think on most cars, even though these cars look pretty pristine otherwise, like these stock cars, look at the roofs. They're all pretty beaten up. So roofs tend to take a beating. The sun beats down on them, soot develops up on them, rain sits on them and causes damage. There's a lot of damage to roofs on a car that aren't on the rest of the car. So now this is a Rio Grande boxcar. You'll notice how, once again, the paint in the roof has really been worn off through the various things. And I really like the weathering on this car. The rust streaks are really, really nice. Very, very well done. And do that. I'd love to be able to do that in a model that fine. That is really, really, really nice work done by God. Now, modern era cars are a lot of times even worse as far as their roofs go than the steam era cars. Look at this Burlington Northern car. First, the car is pretty weathered all the way around. And of course, our taggers were busy. But look at that roof. It's almost totally rusted. And so if you model modern era, you still got to do some serious roof work. And this car here, which is a maintenance away car, isn't as bad as the other one, but you can see that it definitely is worse for wear. So let's talk about how we're going to do this. So after I primered this car and I got the let it dry for a couple of days, I used some Floquil Old Silver and brush coated a coat of old silver on it. Of course, not doing the roof walk because that would be wood, and let that dry for a couple of days. And then I used what they call the salt technique. Now, I learned a lot from military modelers on how to do things. Those guys, in a lot of ways, are way ahead of us in a lot of their weathering ideas. One of the techniques they have is to use salt. On this project, I used just plain table salt. I had some coarse Himalayan pink salt that I used, which worked good in the O scale car, not so well in the HO. I probably would have been better off using a finer salt on the HO car, but I'm an O scale modeler, so I'm used to using what I used. So then I mixed together, and the color looks off in this picture here, but it's actually more brown than it looks here. I mixed polyscale, Rock Island Maroon, and Boxcar Red, about a 50-50 mixture to get a reddish brown color that was close to what the CN had on their cars. So that's where we're at this stage here. Then I, after the cars bought a paint, I scraped off the salt with a very stiff brush, and then went back and did some washes over it so it wasn't so blatantly silver. I didn't like to have it be really, really that bright silver like that boxcar had on it. I thought it kind of more toned down. So that's what I did, but I wanted it to be really kind of mottled and ugly, and I think I achieved that on both cars. Then I did the roof walk, went back and did a little more touch up, a little more scraping with the coarse scraper to remove some of the color, the red color. And I painted the roof walk that I built using multiple layers of, well, first I put a coat of Tamiya wood deck tan. That didn't work real well. So then I went back to just craft paints, and I used a tan color, a brown color, and a gray color. And that's actually grayer than it looks in this picture here. But I did that with multiple layers and got the various tone qualities in the roof walk. For the HO car, I did the same thing. It's a little more obvious with the various tones in the wood on the HO car. Okay, that pretty much, does that wrap anything up? Yeah, that pretty much wraps up what we did for this one. Next time we'll finish weathering. We'll do the lettering, final assembly. Till then.